Continuing on the Darkness series, today we're on episode number 6. We'll be discussing vandals. So, vandalism, let's just define it real quick, is the action involving deliberate destruction of or damage to public or private property. When you say the word vandalism and you define it like that, it sounds kind of benign. Like, okay, somebody spray painted a wall or somebody broke something. I guess it doesn't mean anything if it doesn't belong to you. I think we've all had the experience where somebody hits your car in the parking lot and drives away, or somebody eggs your house and you don't know who did it, or they TP the house, etc. Sometimes they're pranks performed in good faith. There's a distinction to be made between vandalism and maybe one of your friends pulling over kind of a harsh prank. So let's parse that really quick, because we're talking specifically about crime, not pranks and not jokes made that are well-intentioned, etc. But true vandalism. So where does the word come from? I thought that was interesting. It's the Vandals, the ancient Germanic people, are associated with senseless destruction as a result of their sack of Rome under King Genseric in 455. And so, as Rome was vandalized, the Vandals were seen as the bad guys, and of course, the Romans were the victims. As we know, the Romans were no victims. And in that regard, maybe the Vandals were the Germanic people, conquered people. I don't know. I don't know enough about history to understand if it was just a crime of a good force against a bad force, or they were both bad actors, etc. I don't know. But anyway, they did enough destruction to earn a name, which is pretty cool. Or that was their name, and the crime got named after them. Either way, I guess you might want to be known for better shit, but I guess they're not forgotten. So let's go over some examples of graffiti that people don't typically think about. So we all understand about graffiti, the destruction of art using graffiti. Sometimes they throw tomatoes. I think lately there's been a lot of protests where people show up at a museum and destroy a painting by pouring paint on it or throwing something at it. And it's highly destructive. Billboard liberation, we've all seen, or we've heard of the graffiti on the billboard, and crop circles. Some people see that as vandalism. Well, if it's your crops and you're depending on the income from that crop, then yeah, it's definitely vandalism. So where do we go from here? You could say that vandalism isn't so bad, but it's another gateway, a gateway to more severe crimes. For example, if a vandal breaks a window, well, now you have an open window. And when we spoke about the honest man, right, the opportunist, now there's the opportunity to gain entry into a place that I previously didn't have entry to. The window's broken, nobody's here, there's some valuable stuff inside. Now I'm a burglar. So it goes from vandalism to breaking and entering, and to burglary, and the crime is more severe, and therefore the punishment is more severe. And why would you do that to yourself? You owe it to yourself to protect your freedom at all costs. I know there's a culture and a mentality that vandalism is some sort of rebellious tool, the tool of the rebel. And that's fine. You can think about it that way if you want. But there are only negative consequences for those types of actions. And people will say, well, there's no victim. There absolutely are victims. Typically, when you vandalize something, if it's a public thing, the taxpayer ends up shouldering the burden. That means your mom and dad, or aunt and uncle, or you, if you have employment in that city, you end up paying the bill to have that stuff cleaned up. Not only that, but let's say a building is burned down, which happens in riots, right? Rioting is a form of vandalism. It's also a form of protest. I wouldn't call rioting, I guess, a productive form of protest. I've never seen it yield any positive results. You could say we got attention, but there's different ways to get attention. There are better ways to get attention, and that's my point. You have to find a better method for the release of the anger, the energy, the expenditure of that frustration that comes with, living in certain conditions. Because as I was reading about this, if people see graffiti or litter in a place, let me see what it, they're twice as likely to steal something from that area. And so it goes to that broken windows philosophy, where if there's broken windows, or something left undone and unsightly, it leads people to believe that nobody values that area, or the people that live there don't value their living condition. Therefore, it's free reign to steal and pillage, which is insane. That is not true. Even if something is dilapidated and it's not yours, it still belongs to somebody. That's somebody's, one man's trash is another man's treasure. And so you can't walk around with a mentality that just because nobody's watching, there's your integrity. Don't sacrifice your integrity, that you can break something or destroy something, because there are victims. And those victims end up shouldering the cost. If you break a window in my house, I may not have the $100 to repair it, because rent is high. If I'm renting the place, even worse, will my landlord fix the damn thing? And how long will it take them to repair it? Of course, you have, big companies. So if you go to the private sector and you damage something, they have insurance. And what does that do? Well, that raises insurance rates for everybody else who's paying insurance. Because, of course, the company ain't going to shoulder that financial burden. They're going to submit an insurance claim, and they're going to get that thing repaired or whatever. It just doesn't add up to anything positive in the long run or in the short term. If you have a bunch of gang graffiti in your area, well, now you're encouraging the youth to not only participate in the graffiti itself, but you're encouraging to enlist in that gang culture. And shouldn't our responsibility be, if we're complaining about our life's station, our situation, the way that our environment is operating, couldn't we just not participate? I understand that peer pressure is part of vandalism. It's another thing I read. There's a lot of peer pressure to do stuff, and vandalism is one of them. Hey, let's tag this, let's tag that. We're not gang members yet, but let's prove our desire to join the gang by assisting in some tagging. Oh, look at this nice artwork I did. Of course, the members of that community don't believe that it's artwork. It looks horrific to them. It's unsightly. And again, why do you want to protect the aesthetics of where you live? The way something looks, the niceties of the thing, just the visual pleasantry that comes from seeing something nice and orderly, like looking at a flower or looking at a fish or looking at the clouds. It's some sort of organized chaos, but it's natural. The same thing with a house with a nice white picket fence, a nice curb, nice sidewalk. Even if it's not in the greatest of shape, if somebody's manicuring it, or at least making the attempt to take care of it, it looks better than if there's a bunch of broken glass and graffiti, trash, and a bunch of different articles, with some other type of vandalism, political vandalism. So that's a big one in the United States right now. I don't know to what extent, but you got people who are afraid to put political campaign signs on their lawn. I encourage it. I think people should express who they're voting for. It's important. It's important for the democratic process. It's important so that we as neighbors can talk about our different points of view and ideologies. If you have a Harris sign on one house and you have a Trump sign on the next house, you have two neighbors with obviously different opposing political points of view. But are they really all purely political? It may be something else. It may be the single issue voter, for example, abortion. But we all know that for the vast majority of us see abortion in kind of the same light. maybe a woman should have a choice, but you shouldn't have a choice up until 4.5 months into the pregnancy. I don't know, but I think there's some general consensus amongst us that there's a place in our society for certain types of abortion. Danger of the fetus, danger of the mother, different just different requirements for that procedure that are absolutely valid. If you know your baby is going to be born without a brain, there are some parents who try to take the responsible and the merciful route to not give birth to a human being that can't function, can't take care of itself, and it will probably likely suffer if it exists outside of a woman's womb. And that's just one take on it. You could view it however you want, but when we're destroying signs and we're defacing signs of our political rivals, that only again incites more chaos, because what happens there is now you're looking at true violence, physical altercations over property damage. So if my neighbor has a Trump sign and I have a Harris sign and they came and crossed it out, we might have a problem, because no, they shouldn't be on my property, and vice versa, right? I shouldn't be antagonizing my neighbors by destroying their stuff. And but that's the way it is right now. And I don't know about direct neighbors, because political ideologies tend to concentrate in neighborhoods. So anyway, long story short, you can see how it can escalate quickly from just a simple tagging or graffiti on a sign to a physical altercation, which could lead to a fight, which is violence, which could lead to serious injury, which is a different level of assault, or even death, which of course is murder. And that all that helps you to climb the scale of darkness. So you're starting at tier 2 as a plain ass vandal. You crossed out somebody's Harris or Trump sign, and then the person in that household comes out with the issue for you. And it may have bullets in it. The issue might have bullets in it, and they might cap your ass. Or they might actually know how to handle themselves physically, and they might put a fucking whooping to you, or vice versa. And that's not good for the neighborhood. That's not good for your community. That's not good for the individual. That's not good for society in general. And that's the point. Vandalism is kind of like a culture. It's a dynamic of some cultures. For example, gangs. Vandalism is huge, right? You mark your territory, you're putting up signs, no trespassing, right? That's exactly what that means. This is my boundary, this is where I'm at. Or I cross into your neighborhood, and now I'm putting up my graffiti in your neighborhood, trying to expand my territory, and I'm antagonizing my rivals. Nothing good comes from that, because that's a call to direct confrontation. And what kind of confrontation? Gang on gang violence. It's not always a fist fight. Sometimes it turns into a knife fight, or sometimes it just turns into a shootout, which you can look this up. That's exactly what happens. And that's the point. All these lower level crimes tend to escalate whether we like it or not. Again, the example of just having litter or graffiti in an area creates an environment where people are twice as likely to steal something. Again, if somebody leaves their area unkept, it implies that you don't care. And frequently that is not true. Sometimes it's true, but often no. Sometimes people just can't afford to do better. They don't have time. People have fucking jobs. They don't have time to go outside and clean their yard the way they should, etc. Just don't do it. What other stuff seems benign? So animal rights activists. While I agree that animals probably have a soul, and that they feel pain, and that they deserve our mercy and our empathy, and to be treated with respect, regardless of whether they're just pets or we use them for food, consumption. We have to respect those entities if we do believe in a higher power and God, and that we're supposed to live in balance with our environment, etc. But animal rights activists destroy property owned by farmers, and I use Wikipedia and a couple of just basic web searches for this stuff, so you can look all this nonsense up. Um, let's see, where was I? They destroy property owned by farmers. You know, these are the people putting food on our tables. You know, you have different types of farmers. You have family farms. You have corporate farming operations, and even though I don't agree with the large type of corporate agriculture we execute these days, uh, it's still wrong to use, you know, violence to try to influence their position, because what do they have? They have more money. They have billions and billions of dollars. They can give a fuck less if you destroy their shit. Insurance is going to cover it, and the cost of that insurance and the cost of the loss is only passed on to the consumer. You only victimize, making more victims basically. Hunters, you know, there are lots of people who hunt, and most of those hunters hunt ethically. I know a bunch of hunters, and you know, I've never been hunting, but I know these people. I know them to be good human beings, and most of them are ethical hunters. You have some people who are assholes, but I think that's the exception. Matter of fact, those hunters might actually be vandals, the ones that go out and destroy animals outside the season or without a permit, or are simply out there being cruel. Of course, if you're killing animals for fun, you're way up higher on the scale of darkness. But anyway, just I guess it depends on the severity, the degree. Biotech companies, yeah, some of those folks are horrible, but again, it doesn't justify the the vandalism. Research facilities and setting animals free. Look, we can't have monkeys and lions literally running down the street. Uh, Regular human beings like you and me don't know how to deal with that shit. We would quickly get consumed by an animal of that nature. And maybe a monkey wouldn't eat us, but it might eat our face. You can Google that story. That's insane. Anyway, so don't be letting the animals go. What are alternatives? Before we start, let's just keep going on this, and then we'll get to alternatives to vandalism. Let's see. Why do people commit vandalism? The way I always view it is typically it's either some kid, and usually it's youth, that create a lot of the vandalism. It's not always youth, but most often it is. Or it's usually like a domestic dispute where the guy or the gal keys the other person's car, or they you have the renter and landlord dispute where the renter pours concrete down the all the drains of the house before they terminate their lease. That's cruel. That I don't understand that one, because that is a really high level. It's expensive. It gets expensive to repair those things, and not only that, I don't know if there's like secondary consequences for the sewage system when people do stuff like that. I wouldn't know. I've never done that, but it may cost the taxpayer money as opposed to just the landlord. Envy, again, one of the 7 deadly sins, another gateway. Envy is a gateway to evil and self-enslavement. You get captured by the idea of taking vengeance on somebody, or you see that shiny object that they have and you don't have access to it because you don't have the education, you don't have the financial means, etc. And it's easier just to be a hater and break their shit than it is to maybe improve your skill set, or find and the talent within yourself and refine that talent so that you can earn enough money to buy that thing, whether it be a Corvette, a Bentley, or maybe just a Honda, a nice Honda Civic, some reliable transportation. People are envious of that too. It's okay. Moving on. What are some other reasons? Culture, our gang culture, our desire to tag stuff because that's what we do. It's part of our modus operandi. That's how we operate. We have to tag our property to keep intruders out, or to let them know when they've trespassed. You have what it says, disgruntled victim. I just see it the same as an angry person who's looking for revenge. Again, envy and wrath, right? are two of the seven deadly sins, gateways to vandalism, gateways to potentially burglary and a bunch of other crimes, potentially even death, right? Because if somebody comes out to protect their property, somebody might die. And that's, look that one up. And so what are some consequences, right? In the United States, we take vandalism kind of seriously. It's a big financial loss for whoever's a victim of it. It creates an ugly environment. No doubt that there are some quality graffiti artists, and I really love that art, but there's a place for that stuff. There's a legitimate way to get that done, and you should find it. I think some places even approve areas where you can do graffiti on the walls in public space and not get in trouble. Seek that stuff out. In Singapore, it says here that a person who attempts to cause or commit an act of vandalism may be liable for imprisonment for up to 3 years, and may also be punished with caning. And so I don't know if you've ever seen the results of a caning, but it takes flesh off, right? And they just hit him like a child. Well, not like a child. They hit him on the bottom, on the ass. They literally whoop their ass with a cane, and you could get 10 lashes, or you can get 25 or 50. I don't know how they determine how many you get, but anything more than a few, and the flesh starts to tear open. I don't know if you've seen these pictures. I don't know how I came across that shit, but it looks horrific. It looks painful, and you really want to put yourself through that. That may not be the case in the United States, but if you're a vandal and you're not a hardcore criminal, and you end up breaking a thing of enough value, now your crime is much more severe. So that means your punishment is more severe. And if you have to spend any amount of time in jail, now you have a record, potentially ruin your life. But not just that. Jail is not an environment for any of us, really. It's just not conducive to a healthy mind. Maybe you could argue a healthy body, because you got time to do that stuff. But I don't see how that's a quality life. And some places consider vandalism just that, a quality of life crime, where I have a pristine place because we have people maintaining the grounds, people maintaining the building, people maintaining the public space and the private space together. It looks really nice. But as soon as somebody starts tagging stuff, it brings the whole area down. You could see that stuff from a mile away. You could see it as you're coming up the street. And it's like, oh man, somebody's messed up the wall up there. It becomes an eyesore. And again, it invites a bunch of other stuff with it. People's minds are simplistic. Our minds are very simple. They're highly influential. And so the mere presence of graffiti or trash or something that's unkept invokes something in us that makes it okay. It makes it permissible to continue to dilapidate that area that simply might have some trash or graffiti around it. Another one, it's a more modern type of vandalism, cyber vandalism, right? You deface a website, or you modify the information on that site, and now it says something it's not supposed to. Some people consider cyber vandalism a form of creativity or artistry. You're a fucking criminal. Don't do that shit. Some people, you might feel deserve to have that happen to them, right? Their website defaced, or maybe you want to set the record straight on their website, but put up your own website. Fight fire with fire. And I mean that in a metaphorical sense, not in the literal sense, because that's where we all win. You have a better information campaign. You have a more moral information campaign. Not just that, a better informed information campaign, a more well articulated, better argued information campaign. And that's how you influence people. Of course, you can influence people through violence, but that's just conformity. Because I'd rather, regardless of what's in my head, I would rather not get my ass killed or burn at the stake for my belief system. I'll just conform. Of course, that's where you get, all these religions and shit from. Anyway, moving on. So what other types of crime does vandalism lead to? criminal trespass. So again, you break the window. Now I'm in gang violence. We've already talked about that ad nauseum. And that's it. That concludes today's little lesson on the scale of darkness. These are tier 2 criminals. We are in the third category, number 3 of tier 2, plain ass criminals. We're just talking about plain ass criminals. The other day we discussed the community criminals. Yesterday we talked about immoral criminals and how their behavior leads to more extreme types of crime. And today we spoke about vandals. And there's a direct linkage now to that type of crime and other more severe types of crime, up to and including murder. And of course, all those more severe crimes put you higher up on the scale of darkness. And again, I'm making an appeal to my brothers and sisters who feel that this type of behavior is okay. And, you know, I hate to sound judgy, and obviously that's probably what I'm doing here, but at the same time, it needs to be addressed. You know, drug manufacturing, you know, pimping, at least illegal stuff, legal pimping, legal types of behavior in that realm, and vandalism. None of that is good for your environment. If you're the one introducing that into your environment, there are criminals who won't complain about it, right? It's like, oh, well, I'm fine with this stuff. But most people there, they don't want to be surrounded by that stuff. It brings the whole community down. You're influencing the younger generation to just follow in your footsteps. And the only way to improve the next generation's lives is for us to improve. The only way to improve the life of everybody around us is for enough of us to improve that society collectively starts to do better. And that's the point. What did I want to close up with? So how do I, like, in my mind, see a conversion from being a bad guy to a good guy? I'll give you a story. Let me think of something shitty I've done in my life, and kind of how I've righted my ship. Something benign that that doesn't outline specific victims. Again, driving drunk. That was a dark aspect of my personality at one time, where I was always consuming alcohol. Of course, I was self-medicating for other reasons, but there could have been some true victims in that. It really, I could have had a severe impact on somebody's life. You've heard of the accidents where the drunk driver takes out a whole family dies, or the whole family minus one child dies, and now that child is an orphan, and they're alone. And of course, this is a horrible, horrible picture to paint, but those are the possibilities. You can look those up. Those happen, and they happen frequently, but they shouldn't happen at all. So the appeal is to understand who you are, understand the dark parts of your personality, and then try to see the light, try to steer your behavior in a better way. And all this takes time. It's an evolution. It's an evolution of who you are, your character. But it has to be important, right? And that's what I'm trying to appeal to. It should be important to you that you have some sort of upstanding character. If it's not for all of us, if it's not for yourself, and it's not for the rest of us, if you believe in God, right, and you have to be judged one day, maybe you can use that as your guiding principle for better behavior, right? You got to go be seen, or stand in front of the Lord or God or whoever your person is up there or down there or whatever, and they're going to judge you by your behavior, and you're expecting a reward for it. Well, we all know right from wrong, and I don't care what your books say about what right is and wrong is. On the human plane, we all understand introducing any type of level of suffering to another human being is simply wrong. And so by definition, probably evil. And so what I want to present is my little infinite migration picture, right? It's the yin and the yang, the dark side here. So you're in the light, right? You're a good guy, but you have some bad behaviors, and that's chaos right in the center, right? It leads to evil. Let's see, exile. right? Now you're in jail, or your community puts you out for being a bad guy. Tyranny, you enjoy being the bad guy, and you're just victimizing all kinds of people. And despair, right? People who are addicts, people who are in dire need of money, right? They tend to act out of character when they're desperate. And especially for financial stuff, you need money to survive in this modern world. And so you enter the realm of darkness, chaos, and you end up over here. But there's also redemption, right? It's a cycle, it's a loop. And if you're living in the dark, if you're being an evil motherfucker, you know that's who you've been and that's what you've been doing. There's always redemption. There's the light there. That is order. That is bringing some order to your life, bring some structure, some discipline. It gives you freedom. That little dot represents hope. You have some hope for a better future, a brighter future. Good, right? Once you start to do good and you go through that porthole and you come out on the other side, in this lighter side, you start to see life from a very different perspective. You start to appreciate much more the good in life. And then redemption. There is such a thing as redeeming yourself. Like I said, I don't know if I'll ever get into heaven based on all the insanity I've done. But that's not the point. The point is that, you know, we understand our flaws. We are honest about them. You could even put them down on paper. That's what I do. I write everything. I try to write everything out. And then I put them in order from worst to least severe. And then I improve the ones I can that day or immediately. You know, they call it low-hanging fruit, right? Let's just take the easy wins. But you take the worst one and you focus on that. It's like paying off your highest interest credit card with the highest balance. You want to focus on that because that's the one that's the most impactful to your financial future. And just like that, your worst behavior is the most impactful to your behavior, your moral and ethical self. Of course, it doesn't have to matter to you. It doesn't have to be important. But that's why we try to influence people to seek better behavior. We're not going to beat it out of them. We're not going to incarcerate good behavior out of people. We've already proven that doesn't work. What's going to work is our direct appeal to each other, our embracing of a baseline of ideas of what is good and bad, and understanding that we exist in a reality where we can be both good and bad, and one should dominate the other. And which one dominates you? And of course, that's what the yin yang represents. That line simply means that there's a duality to our soul. I'm a faith-based person, but I can't tell you if God or the devil are real or not. I act as if they are. I behave as if they are. But what side do I want to win? Right? If we're pitching it as a battle between good and evil, well, it's good, but there's no physical true altercation you can have with evil. The evil, the battle is inside. It's inside the individual. And of course, depending on how many people win, the battle within themselves against evil determines how much better it is on the outside in society for the majority of us. The line also represents balance. It can't be all hunky-dory all the time. There's a time to turn on the fuck you button. For example, if somebody's attacking your family, now you got to defend them. If somebody's attacking you, you got to defend yourself. If the government becomes tyrannical and they want to enforce some sort of extreme policy, taking away your freedom of speech or your right to protest, peaceful protest, a caveat that, then maybe there is call for some sort of altercation. But beyond some extreme, We can do much better, and we're designed to do much better. Why would God endow us with this brain, with this type level of thinking capability, if we're just going to decide to act like the animals and the strongest survive and the weakest die? That's not how it works for human beings. And so there's a different component of our existence that we must address, and that's our morality, our conformity to what other people need that are around us, and being empathetic and sympathetic to those needs. That's kind of it for today. We have the opportunity to shift from good and bad at any time. Looking at the scale of darkness and the different types of activities we can perform on there, it's not hard to understand that in a matter of time, you can simply start climbing this ladder of evil without realizing it. You just get sucked in. You start with vandalism, and now you're a burglar. You start with burglary, but somebody was inside, and you don't want to get caught. It's your third strike, and now you're a murderer because you don't want to leave any witnesses. And of course, you wouldn't do that in a normal situation. It's probably a decision you make spontaneously. Most murders are like that, actually. I think 75% of them, only like 1 in 4 are actually thought out, that would be considered technically first-degree murder. Of course, there's a bunch of different ways that they define that shit. They're not consistent. But yeah, you don't want to end up in the higher tiers. Again, it's the impact. The severity of your crime simply impacts people in a worse way, or more people. And that's the point here. Let's do better. Good luck out there.